so that who cannot join us tonight can listen to the recording. I've had a number of requests already for the recording. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. I'm Bruce Sherman. I am an advisory neighborhood commissioner in the Chevy Chase area. It's ANC 34G. My district is 02. I want to note that this is an event that originated with questions to me from my constituents about what's happening in DC and what they might do about it in terms of how they might engage. So it occurred to me, and I spoke then to my former colleague Peter Lynch about hosting this conversation and inviting folks knowledgeable of the events on the ground now, and also ways to encourage citizens to engage if they wish. And that has shaped the panel for tonight. And I'm very pleased, even though this is not a full ANC 34G event, to have fellow commissioners on the call. I want to acknowledge them as we get started. And in no particular order, I'm looking at my screen. Peter Goslin is with us tonight. Liz Nagy is with us tonight. Carol Grunwald is also with us tonight. So you have 5 of the 7 commissioners from ANC 34G on the call, and I'm grateful to my fellow commissioners for joining tonight. So what I'd like to do is very quickly describe what we have in store, give you the sort of the rundown, the run of show, and then introduce our panelists and get started. We are billed until 8 o'clock, but given the robust response, if there are lingering questions and our panelists don't mind and we go a little past 8, that would be great. If you can't continue past 8, don't worry. Feel free to drop off. But I do know we'll likely have a lot of questions from the community. The name of the program tonight is the Takeover, and what to know and how to engage. Again, this stems from comments and questions that I've gotten from my constituents. So that's what we're about tonight, and we hope to inform both you as to what's going on and also give you practical ways, sensible, safe ways to engage within your rights as citizens in the District of Columbia. So that's our program. Let me introduce again our panelists tonight, and I'll start with Martin Ostermuhl, who many of you
I
know,
got it.
Was a longtime reporter and editor at WAMU
What?
88.5 FM.
Yeah, go ahead and come in here.
Please, folks, mute yourselves as you come on the call, if you don't mind. I'll be doing that as I go through. Again, this is not a webinar. This is an actual web, regular Zoom call in which folks don't automatically get muted. Martin will be giving us an overview based on his reporting for the 51st. I have sent around to everyone links to the latest update from last Thursday. That was kind of a lay of the land piece, and Martin will be referring to that basic template and bringing us up to speed on what's happening across the district right now. Monica Hopkins is Executive Director. Hi, Monica, of the DC chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union. She will be speaking to issues related to our rights and what ACLU is doing. Ann Anderson is with the League of Women Voters DC chapter. She's a board trustee, and she also chairs their full DC Rights Committee. From Free DC, we have Lee, who is the co-lead of Ward 3 for DC Free DC, and Lorna Notch, who is the co-lead for their events group at Free DC. So with that introduction of the panelists, we're going to start with Martin. But before I get to that, I'd like to turn to my colleague Peter Lynch for his opening remarks. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this meeting, Bruce. And these are really sort of weird and uncertain times in DC. I'm a high school English teacher by trade, and so I thought I'd maybe start off this conversation with couching this in a little bit of history. We are only 260 years away from the Stamp Act rebellion in Boston, which originated the term no taxation without representation. And you all know that we see that on our license plates, and it's our rallying call. Our representative, Eleanor Holmes Norton, is the great granddaughter of a fugitive slave. She helped organize the March on Washington as a youth organizer for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And I think what we're seeing right now is unprecedented, and it's so encouraging to see so many people come out and stand up against what's happening right now. There's a ton of ways to get involved, and it's essential that people step in and do what they can, and realize that we are fresh in this democracy and in this project of DC democracy. My parents came to this city before home rule existed. So the concept of having ANCs are relatively new, and I also see some older commissioners here who served on ANC 34G. So we have a lot of work to do, but I think this is no better time to highlight the vulnerability we all face in not having statehood. So great to see you all. Thank you for being here, and really look forward to these fantastic panelists we've got.
Great. Thank you very much, Peter. So let's jump right in again. We're looking at what you need to know and how you might be able to engage. And to get us started is Martin Ostermuhl again, as I introduced before. Just a note on questions. I see Brian Heilman, you've got your hand up already. Let's do this if you don't mind. Let's let the presenters present. I will pause briefly after each presenter if there's a burning question that someone has related to what the presenter has just said. But I do have a period of time towards the end, 20 minutes or so, for open discussion with questions and answers. So if that works for everybody, we will proceed with the first presentation. Martin, please go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Bruce and Peter, for inviting me along. This is a lot of fun. I'm happy this many people showed up, and I'm just going to jump into it. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Martin Ostermuhl. I've been a reporter locally for about 15 years, 10 of them spent at WAMU. The rest of the time spent at DCS, which was a website that WMU eventually bought, and now more recently with the 51st, it's a new news outlet that some colleagues and I launched about a year ago. Just because DCS was killed off, and we decided that we thought that there needs to be, the last thing we need is less local coverage of DC issues. But I wanted to start with where Peter kind of was going with his opening remarks. He said things are weird and uncertain. I think we can all agree that's true. Also unprecedented. I mean, I've tossed that word around a ton for the last week and a half. I think the only thing that's not unprecedented is how often we're now using the term. Just because we've entered a realm that we've never had before. I mean, 50 some odd years of home rule, and this is the first time that we've ever seen a president invoke this one provision of the home rule charter that lets them effectively take control of MPD. Deploying that National Guard that's happened before, but not under the same circumstances. So clearly very unprecedented. Just to summarize where we are, I'm sure a lot of you guys follow the news, but things move so quickly that it's hard to keep track. Basically, as you guys probably all know, the president declared this emergency over crime. Saying he federalized MPD is not the right term because he's not the day-to-day chief of the department, but he can basically tell them, listen, I want you to do X, and they basically have to. That's going to last for 30 days in theory. The city has been fighting back. Last week, there was actually an effort by the Trump administration to install one of its people as the day-to-day operations chief, as the day-to-day chief of the department. Attorney General Brian Schwab fought that. Last Friday, he won a quick reprieve on that one. So Pamela Smith is still the chief of the department on a daily basis. Now, there are still some pending issues that that are unresolved, including how much MPD has to do to cooperate with the feds on enforcement of immigration laws. As you probably know, MPD hasn't made a practice of doing immigration enforcement for quite a while. They'll do limited immigration enforcement if there's a warrant involved, but other than that, they won't hold people past the time that they should be held, just so ICE can show up and grab them, that sort of thing. They don't ask about immigration status, those sorts of deals. Now it looks like they're being forced into the situation where they do have to do immigration enforcement. How much of it they're doing, it's still unclear. There's a lot of unclearness, clarity, I suppose. I don't know. It's tough to tell exactly what's going on there, but that's roughly the status of MPD. Otherwise, you still see them out and about. They're doing their daily jobs. If you call 911, in theory, MPD will show up. It's not like the National Guard will show up at your door instead. But now that we're talking about the National Guard, obviously the other big part of this is that President Trump activated the DC National Guard. 800 of those troops are now in theory, out and about, usually in groups of about 100 to 200 at a time. They haven't been doing much. I mean, if you're up in Chevy Chase, if you're up in most parts of the city, you're not going to see them. If you've been down at the National Mall, you've probably seen them by the Lincoln Memorial, the Tidal Basin. Um, they have something like 6 or 7 heavy military vehicles posted outside Union Station. I went down there today. I mean, nothing was happening more than people, tourists walking up and taking selfies with these ridiculously sized vehicles. Um, but that's kind of what they're doing. They've stepped it up since yesterday. They're now patrolling metro stations, but they're doing it unarmed. Okay. Now, what has changed is that a variety of southern states and one non-southern state have sent their own National Guard contingents. I think all told, it's about I think I counted about 1,200 or so troops from different states are coming, which more than doubles what DC was providing. Um, and they're starting to arrive now. It is very unclear what exactly they're going to be doing. The National Guard has been very vague about exactly what the mission is supposed to be, other than supporting the president's order to kind of deal with crime. There is now reporting, and it was very unclear to begin with, but now it's looking like they may be armed on a more daily basis, on a more consistent basis. Before they weren't supposed to be. So I think there's a lot to look out for there. Now, again, this isn't the first time the National Guard has come to DC. They've come for big protests. They came in 2020 when President Trump called them out then. They came on January 6th, well, after January 6th, I suppose. They came in the late 90s when I think it was when Marion Barry was mayor. He called them, he asked the president to deploy them to help fight what was then the growing crack crisis. But this is the first time they're being used in this way and without much cooperation with locals. I mean, this is very much led by the White House. And then the last thing that we have, we're still waiting to see is what the administration wants to do beyond just working with MPD, deploying the National Guard. They've said that they want to push for district laws to be changed. Obviously, that takes Congress, but there is rumors, or there is kind of, I've heard from a lot of people who know these things, that there is going to be a package of bills introduced in the House to change a variety of the city's criminal justice laws involving um, youth justice, juvenile justice. There could be an attempt to take a lot of the authority that the city's attorney general has to prosecute those crimes, to take that authority away. There's concern that there's going to be changes to laws that allow people who have been sentenced and are serving sentences in prison to request early release after a certain amount of time. So that could be coming down the pike. And I think obviously the big thing to look out for is when President Trump's 30-day period for controlling MPD comes to an end in September. The only way by law that he can extend that is if he asks Congress for an extension. He has said he wants to do it, but he also floated the idea of not even asking Congress and just declaring a national emergency, which he's done on a number of other issues, which grants the president these kind of almost untested powers. So again, this is the sort of thing I would say like it probably won't happen. I think we can all say that you can never say it probably won't happen anymore because if it hasn't happened, it will be tested. Um, so there's that to look out for. And then the last thing to mention, I think the one thing that has very much been obvious over the last week is that if this started out, if the initial premise for this was they wanted to come down on crime in the district, which there's plenty of debate about with the levels of crime and the fact that yes, any amount of crime is unacceptable, but to paint this as Baghdad or Mogadishu, I think we've all seen that that is not particularly accurate. But that was the initial argument for why this had to be done. That's what the White House said. It's become very clear that a lot of more of the emphasis now is immigration enforcement. Every single day we're getting reports of immigration raids. We're seeing it on social media. There's videos of ICE officers like traveling in big groups, pulling up on Uber drivers, taking people, from different communities. And so there's a lot of concern around that, obviously. And like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of concern about the participation of MPD in these sorts of things. They didn't used to do any of this, and now they're kind of getting roped into it. I think late last week or over the weekend, there was traffic stops just off of U Street, and MPD can run traffic stops. They can stop you and say, listen, we're just doing a traffic check. We want to see that like, you've got your car isn't working order and you've got registration, all that sort of stuff. But federal officers were with them, and it essentially turned into like a kind of on-the-spot immigration check. Again, the sort of thing that DC has not often, if ever, seen, at least not in the time that I've been here. So A lot of things are fluid. A lot of things are moving. We don't really know where things are going to go. I think it's fair to say that things are ramping up. Things are getting more aggressive. It doesn't feel like the White House is going to let up. And I think the big question really will be that once we hit this 30-day mark, do they let up on MPD or do they just try to barrel through and keep control over MPD and keep the National Guard deployed? I mean, that's one thing that there's no time limit on. They can keep the DC National Guard deployed as long as they want to pay for it. And that could last quite a while. So, yeah, I hope this is a good summary. If there's any other questions, I realize there's a million things happening, so I try to kind of contain it and try to give you a status update. Half of what I said by tomorrow morning will probably be outdated, and I'm sorry about that. That's just how the news works these days. But yeah, that's where we are.
Thank you, Martin, very much for that. Again, if anyone has a burning question to ask Martin, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. I do want to ask
Right.
Monica Hopkins if you have anything you'd like to add, since ACLU obviously is following the events on the ground very closely.
Yeah, and thanks, Martin, for the setup. Uh, so, we based on sort of what we're seeing, some of those checkpoints that Martin indicated, those traffic stops, some of the homeless sweeps that we have seen and ramping up. These are things we're watching, and it's important to understand sort of the difference between the National Guard and the local police and sort of what they are charged to do, because you asked to talk about people's rights in this. Your rights are the same under the Constitution. And essentially, one of the things that we are asking ourselves is, what is underlying the purpose of this is to sort of expand presidential emergency power, like Martin talked about, and sort of use DC as a way to do that. And we're seeing more and more of the National Guard coming in. We have been spending a lot of time. We really narrowed our focus to legal and policy, and are relying on other great organizations to do some on-the-ground organizing. And so it gave us time to focus on what may happen down the road also with Congress, and are hearing some of the same things Martin said out of Congress. There is also, there are maybe three now, joint resolutions. Jamie Raskin introduced a joint resolution to end the 30 days. Now that has to go through both bodies, and there have been two joint resolutions introduced. One may just be Ogle's tweet, but it has the text. That one would actually be a joint resolution to give the president total authority to call out MPD. So in this moment, the conversations that we are having, we live in the ACLU is a nonpartisan organization, but framing the messaging, we live in a pretty blue area, and essentially what we are seeing and what we are hearing is this general concern, even sort of amongst conservatives, about the separation of power, and additionally this broad overreach. I think in this moment, never waste a good crisis. So some of the engagement that we have been putting together and asking people to do is really connect with folks that they might know in other states to start doing outreach. On our website, there are several things, and I sent them to Bruce, send them to the group. But I will highlight some of them here. We have some policy papers that are essentially one sheets that sort of go through disapproval resolutions, why home rule matters, and additionally, there is a one sheet on the appropriations riders. That it is not a list of all of them. They are the ones that we are particularly concerned about because as people know, the cut to the budget that Congress did last time, the $1 billion. Additionally, if that were to happen again, and if some of these riders would sort of go through, we start getting concerned about the triggers for home rule and a control board. We've made one sheets about those. They have been very helpful explaining to not only our affiliates in all 50 states, but also to congressional members and staffers, because what we learned through the disapproval resolutions that happened is that by the time we caught up to provide information, that train had like left the station and hit 3 other stops on the way. And so to the extent that quality information and touches can be made about really what's going on is really important. And so that is sort of the providing of information and engagement in this way is really critical.
Hey, Monica, can I interrupt you? Monica, can I interrupt just one quick?
Yeah.
Because I want you to come back and speak about what ACLU is doing. Just in terms of what Martin presented, I've got one quick follow-up question before we leave Martin entirely, if you don't mind. Martin, what and Monica, you might have some insight on this as well. To what extent will current events accelerate consideration of the Bowser Act once Congress resumes session in September?
So for those of you who don't know, the Bowser Act is the bill introduced by Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee from Utah, and Andy Ogles. He's the Republican representative from Tennessee, I believe, and that would basically fully repeal home rule. Honestly, I mean, they've been threatening this for a long time, and I think this could potentially fuel kind of discussion in Congress that like DC just doesn't is such a mess that like why should it even have home rule? I still don't think it's going to happen. I think like honestly, I think it's a lot of talk because first of all, it has to clear the Senate. Democrats would most likely filibuster it. Also, the one thing I've always thought, I think it's a lot of posturing to say that they want to repeal home rule. No one on the Hill wants to run a city. There's nothing sexy about picking up trash and filling potholes and running the schools. Like people who get sent to Congress do not get elected to do this sort of stuff. And so I think, again, I think it's the one thing that they're going to hold over the city's head as the ultimate threat. Now, if the president were to say, listen, I want this done, it would clearly move forward. But I'm still not fully convinced that they're even there yet because I think they recognize like if they break it, they buy it.
I tend to agree with Martin, and I think one of the ways that we are sort of thinking about this is there's home rule, and then there's all the ways that Congress can intervene and take control of the things that they want to control, not the potholes, not the trash, and in the ways that they might take control, do we get to the point where we have home rule in name only? And so essentially this, whether we see an omnibus bill or bill by bill on crime, all of a sudden do we operate under a code that is essentially handed down to us by Congress, and then we have to follow that code. The appropriations riders, we've lived under the marijuana rider for a really long time. We've lived under the Medicaid and abortion rider for a really long time. There was the Armstrong Amendment that created a loophole for, public universities or private universities, LGBT organizations at the universities that a little bit more complicated, but can they control and message and do what they want to do without the full frontal attack? Because I think the direct attack is sort of a loser to get it over the finish line.
Great. One other quick question that came through the chat, and feel free to put your questions in the chat. If we can't get to them immediately, we'll get to them at the end in the discussion period. And that is, where are they, meaning DC or federal authorities, putting the homeless that do not wish to go into shelters? They're being forcibly removed, we understand.
So that is a very good question. What I have heard, and it's kind of been confirmed a little bit by what's happening up in Montgomery County, is that they're heading to Montgomery County. Yesterday, County Executive Mark Alroach recorded a video and put it out there, and he was basically saying like they're ramping up because they expect that this is going to happen, that folks who don't want to stay in shelter, and plenty of them have their own reasons, and they're very valid reasons in certain cases, um, if they're not going to be chased from place to place in DC, which many folks who have experienced homelessness have done for years at a time, they will just head up 16th Street, head up Connecticut Avenue, head up Georgia, and go to Silver Spring, go to wherever they can in Montgomery County, and potentially parts of Prince George's County. But yeah, that's essentially what I'm hearing. But a lot of homeless outreach workers are still, that's the thing about homeless encampment clearings is that you have a contained community of people that is now scattered, and these are not the sorts of people who are easy to track down after the fact.
Right. I heard on the mayor's briefing last week from the city administrator that in terms of the number of homeless in the district, that number has been declining as DC has sought to take them into shelters, provide care for them, situate them otherwise, and that the number was around 300 or had come down from that. Do you know, Martin, or do you know, Monica, what that number actually is?
I think what he said, it was about 2 or 3 years ago, it was about 300 people living outside, like formally in encampments, and they said they've driven that down to about 100. I mean, I can't 100% verify that myself, but it sounds anecdotally right.
Right.
Now that's again, folks in formal encampments. I think you have a lot of people, and like there were efforts to clear folks who sleep outside the MLK library downtown. Is that formally an encampment? They're not living in structures necessarily, but they are sleeping outside. I'm not sure if they're kind of defined separately. So again, the numbers and the definitions are it's tough to pin these things down. So I wish I could answer, but I can't.
Right. But just for everyone on this call, it's not 2,000, it's not 5,000. It's a relatively, one might argue, small number of people that are in certain parts of the city that create an impression of homelessness to an extent that warrants, in some people's minds, the president's mind, some involvement here by the federal authorities. But that number is relatively small, as I understand it. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's always the important distinction is, and this is what's counted every year that they do the annual point and count and census, which is the start of the year, and they go out there on a night and they count everybody. That is unsheltered homelessness. That is the big focus because those are literally the folks in most danger. That number has gone up and down over the years, trended down generally speaking. It's gone down most significantly amongst families, which is a good thing. Now, sheltered homelessness still remains high. Shelter beds remain tight if available at all. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but again, we're certainly not at San Francisco, LA, Seattle levels, but I think obviously still enough to be concerned about.
Okay, great. Listen, let's go back to Monica for further, Monica, on what the ACLU is doing. And if you can address this question of citizens' rights to go out and demonstrate, and I know Ann may have guidance on this and our Free DC folks as well, guidelines for participating in civic engagement and civic protests. I know ACLU is very attentive to people's rights, of course, and I'm sure you have thoughts on that you could share with the folks on the call.
Yeah, if I might just tag on to what Martin is saying, and something that I saw in the chat. Essentially, this really low number and sort of tying, clearing these encampments as part of, a reduction in crime is sort of to get a visual of things. So, Diane posted the equation is off. There is also someone who asked a question in the chat about the costs of the guards from various jurisdictions. This was something that we actually hunted down today. And essentially, the guards are paid through federal payment. The operations of the guard while they're deployed to DC are paid by the state, but then reimbursed by the federal government. So for folks who want to be wonky about costs, but it is a great thing to point out, particularly in this time. So the ACLU, as far as your rights, we actually have checked our webpage for Know Your Rights stuff, and we have a whole Know Your Rights page. I want to point out a few that are relevant to DC's population and some of the things that we have heard. So there is basically what to do when you encounter police and federal agents, FBI. There is the demonstration guide. This is really something that we had put out in 2017 for the inauguration and actually sent it out across the nation through our affiliates. The reason this guide is really good is because we actually included some of the badges for the different law enforcement agencies in it so people can clearly identify. One of the things that we heard from MPD early on was everybody thinks that the person arresting them or the person they're interacting with is MPD. So this gives you a really good guide. And if you do know folks who are going to be out there protesting, it's something good to give to folks. Also, there is a Know Your Rights on marijuana. Um, we are in a really weird spot about our marijuana laws. And there was a report before this happened of someone who was arrested in DuPont Circle. And what caught me about the individual who was interviewed is they said, well, marijuana is legal here in DC, and, he was just smoking a joint. DuPont Circle is federal property. You're actually, even though it's legal, not allowed to smoke it in public spaces. So we're pointing people here to spread this word because it opens up a way, particularly for federal officers who might not know DC law. They don't know DC law the way MPD does, to interact with folks. And then finally, the other one that I will point out is we do have a Know Your Rights for deaf individuals. We have a very high deaf population in DC with Gallaudet. And so, we took the time to put this together because the interactions with law enforcement, even before the influx of federal officers, was something that we were concerned about. And then finally, I agree with Martin, really, like they say this is about crime. But really, we're seeing immigration enforcement. When the Trump administration came in, we understood that this was going to be a big push. On our website is an immigrants' rights and resources hub. We connected with a bunch of immigrants' rights advocacy organizations and then also local service providers. And it has sort of know your rights information in there, which is really important to sort of push out. The final thing that I will sort of say here is in this moment, we're really focusing on the National Guard and what's going on and our rights. And we have to remember also that we have a council session that is about to come back in. And, I think it has been really telling. I was listening to a radio show the other day, and they were interviewing local DC residents and what they felt about the Guard coming in this framing of, we're glad for the support because of crime in DC. And so, don't forget to engage at the council, as we go through the council session. And additionally, having conversations about, if you really actually are concerned about public safety, we should be keeping this local. This is not a time for intervention. And we're having those conversations. We also watch the council and have some concerns about what might happen over the next few weeks.
So I think, Monica, you're stressing something very important for folks on the call. I know they're interested in this, and that is where to direct their efforts if they're going to not only protest, but make phone calls, write letters, contact people in whatever form. Whom should they contact? On what issues should they contact? If there's anything further, I want to go to Ann, but as you are listening to the conversation, I want to come back and say, here are some areas that the ACLU would advise that citizens pay attention to. You've just identified a couple, focusing on the council, obviously. But with that, thank you very much. And Ann, I'd like to segue to you. I know when we spoke on the phone, you at the League of Women Voters, also DC chapter, have guidelines for folks who want to engage and want to make their voices known. So please share your thoughts with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for putting this all together. We need to work together, and this kind of action where everybody is thinking about things, I think is a critical piece. So let's keep talking to each other. I am going to defer in terms of knowing your rights and doing those kinds of things to what ACLU-DC is doing. I think they're on target, and we have been referring people to the ACLU as well as to the Free DC Know Your Rights, the red cards that are being distributed around DC. I think it's a critical issue. I'm not going to take a long time, but I just I want to highlight the fact that since we do not have anybody who can vote in Congress, right now, everybody take a look at your Christmas card list, your holiday card list, the people that you have, your friends and family who live in the 50 states, because they are the people who have the power, if anybody has the power, to change our status. And so I'm really encouraging people to just, go talk to your aunt in Kansas and say, hey, this is what's happening here to us. And if you can call your member of Congress and say, hey, what are you doing to DC? That will help. And by the way, the way to fix this overall is to give them statehood, which is absolutely up to Congress. So those are the couple of things that I want to focus on. And if you ever need any kind of help, well, we do education. We help people understand what it's all about. And the other piece of information I want to give you is that we have a Substack account, and we put out for our subscribers, we put out one email a week. So you're not going to get inundated. One email a week that is basically putting an overview of what happened in the week, what bills were introduced in Congress that are anti-home rule, and with a couple of ideas for action to take place right there. And you can, I can see that Peter just put it in. lwbdc.org is our website. lwbdc.substack.com is our Substack. And like I say, you'll get one email a week from us that'll be a quick, straightforward, here's what's happened, and here's a couple things you can do. And we're very interested in people having a chance to talk about what statehood means to them, how we're being affected by this mess that is being perpetrated on our communities. And so that's where we want to go. So let me just stop there because I would really like to hear from Free DC.
Fantastic. Well, it's a perfect segue. Lily from Free DC, please take it away from there. We'll go to you first. And if you don't mind giving us a bit of an overview of Free DC for folks who may not be familiar with your organization.
Yes,
Hey,
good evening,
Bruce, if I could step in just one moment before the Free DC folks get going, because they're doing fantastic work. But League of Women Voters has been around for a long time, and Anne is being extraordinarily humble right now. They are some of the leaders on advocating for statehood, on getting out the vote, on registering people to vote, on connecting people in other states. It's extraordinary work. They're very humble. They do it quietly. And I highly recommend anybody that's interested to get involved. And thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And
Thanks,
go
Peter.
ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much, Peter. Lily, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lily. I am a native Washingtonian, and I have been privileged to live in every ward within the city. I am currently the Free DC Ward 3 co-chair. Free DC is a movement led by the people, for us to win our dignity and to exert our self-determination within the District of Columbia. As we can see right now, we are under full attack. We are experiencing interference on our local laws, restricting our local budget, and just the federal government and administration imposing their will within our communities. I just want to second everything that Anne and Monica shared in regards to knowing your rights. So Free DC is a movement. We're very big on one, education. We need to make sure that all of our members and citizens of the District of Columbia are educated about DC history and the home rule. Secondly, we want to make sure that everyone is aware of our rights in regards to engaging with law enforcement, your rights regarding immigration status, and if you are unhoused. Those things are very important, so that way we can make sure that we are prioritizing our safety. And another thing that we do is prioritize joy. We are strong in community when we are engaging with one another. We are firm believers in the fact that we keep each other safe. If you ask the average resident of the District of Columbia, do they feel safe? Most of the time, they're going to respond and say yes. Crime is everywhere in every major city, but in Washington, D.C., our crime is at its lowest that it's been in the past 30 years. As I've stated, we're a very joyful city. So while we prioritize joy and safety, we want to make sure that we are focusing on going out in pairs because we're stronger in numbers. Right now, Harriet's Wildest Dreams, they have a campaign called We Go Together because we want to make sure that we're keeping each other safe when we're out engaging within community. I have Lorna here, and she can speak about our events. We are closely in relationship with several council members, villages, tenants associations, community associations, because our power lies within us. So if you want to speak a little bit about our upcoming event that we're going to have in Ward 3, Lorna, I would greatly appreciate that.
Absolutely. So thank you, Lily, for that intro. I'm Lorna Notch, and I have lived in DC long enough that I am not a native, but I am definitely a local at this point. And one of the things, like, prioritize joy, take up space. And those are two of the Free DC principles. And so we are holding hopefully a massive, we'd love to see the entire Ward 3 population turn up. We are having a kickoff event on Saturday, September 27th at St. Columba's Episcopal Church in Tenleytown from 1 to 3 p.m. Everyone is welcome. You may start seeing the flyers around. I've been canvassing the Chevy Chase businesses. If you don't see a flyer in a Chevy Chase business, maybe ask them why they don't have a flyer in the Chevy Chase business and say, I know someone who can get you one, and we'll get one up there. Besides our big kickoff, we also do tabling at farmers markets. You may have seen us at the Fort Reno concert series. We definitely are trying to get to more and more events. Lily was just tabling on Sunday at a concert. So we're at different events, and you can find out. We were at karaoke. You may have heard us on Saturday. We were making joyful noise in Chevy Chase in front of Child's Play, karaoke for a cause. So we are definitely trying to engage with the community, inform people about Free DC, about their rights, but also socialize. So we're going, as Ward 3 Free DC members, we also want to have the opportunity to get to know each other, to build that trust, because that solidarity is based on trust. And I think one of the things that we're also doing for events is reaching out to local businesses to see, get a feel. I know that this occupation has done a lot for for some businesses, but it's actually been very harmful for others. So trying to work on the economic impact. And also we are, protests, that's an obvious one. There's a lot going on. Indivisible, 50501, Free DC, No Kings. There are lots of very peaceful protest groups. There's lots of at metro stations, visibility, signage, rush hour. You may see people, but we're really trying to be visible and show people there is a resistance. But I think also we're definitely prioritizing the joy. We want people to come to this city, whether they are the occupation force or whether they are tourists, however they're coming, that they see that that DC is not perfect, but it is an amazingly beautiful and overall wonderful place.
Yes, and
Peter, I see your hands up.
Did you want to go, Peter?
Oh yeah, could you two speak to? I know there's a priority for the campaign orientation, and then also the non-cooperation training and the numbers that you all are trying to hit. I also volunteer with Free DC, but then also if you could maybe highlight how the meeting went last night, which I thought was remarkable.
Yes, so DC is a beautifully unique and diverse city. We have representation of everyone of every color and creed. Our goal is to make sure that we have 3,000 members per every ward. We are a full movement within DC, but we have different subgroups within each 8 wards representing Free DC. Yesterday, we hosted our monthly meeting at the Cleveland Park Library, and it was our largest meeting to date. One of our visitors was our Ward 3 council member, Matt Fruman. So it was great to see him yesterday. With Free DC, we encourage everyone to go to our website so that way they can do an in-person or virtual orientation. And then after that, we would want that person to come to our meetings so that they can engage with other meetings. We focus on our member strengths so that way we could do the work selflessly and make sure that we are prioritizing our strengths and not overwhelming ourselves with the everyday negativity that we're hearing within the media and the news. One other thing that I want to speak about is our joyful noisemaking. Every evening from 8 to 8:05 p.m., we go out and we make noise. Our Ward 3 central location is within Tentleytown at the Middle C Music, and it's an absolutely beautiful experience. The owner from Middle C Music allows us to use instruments, and we make noise from 8 to 8:05 p.m. So that's one of the ways in which we spread positivity, community, and joy.
Lily, can
But
I?
if you can't make it, I was just gonna say, if you can't make it to that corner or to make it to that spot, any spot you are, show up. Yep. Yeah. Sorry, Bruce.
No, that's fine. Now, can I jump in to ask this question because mindful of the people on this call who have tuned in part to understand what's happening, and then again how they can engage, and you're giving them ways to engage with your organization. At the same time, many of us are aware of many organizations across town calling for rallies, calling for protest. Is there a one-stop shop online somewhere where one could see protests that have already been organized on certain dates and times now, like tomorrow or the next day or this weekend coming, that people could attend?
So for Free DC on our website, we have an events calendar. And if you click on any date, it'll let you know if we're going to be out and rallying or protesting in public. And when we do that, we prioritize joy. We do sometimes partner with other groups, but for the most part, we're really focused on visibility across the District of Columbia because we want to make sure that we're having a positive representation of our unique and diverse residents of the District of Columbia.
That's fantastic. This calendar.
Yeah, to my knowledge, Bruce, there's not a one-stop shop. To my knowledge, there's not a one-stop shop. Because some things are also very impromptu as well.
Yeah, like over the past 2 weeks, we've had to organize very quickly with these calls to actions and just partnering with our local media to make sure that our message is being spread across, not just DC, but the nation.
Well, let me then just ask this question. If there were one thing that the panelists, save Martin, who's a journalist, not an activist, would recommend or advise folks on this call to do, or an area to focus their attention, what would it be? Something they could do tomorrow or in the next couple of days.
Well, let me just say, I'll say it again. If you have somebody that lives in one of the 50 states, that's who you call and talk to. That's who you send a note to. By the way, did you know what's going on in DC? Because the reality is that from my perspective, this is a way of normalizing the militarization of the police, the National Guard, the federal, the whole thing. And we've got to stop making that normal. This is not normal.
Mm-hmm.
I see my colleague Peter has his hand up. Peter, I'll come to you in just 1 second. If though Monica and others have a specific recommendation of something you would suggest folks on this call do, what would it be?
And to further elaborate on what Ann just shared, education is power. You know, we have a lot of people that haven't visited the nation's capital that are making decisions for the nation's capital, and that's not okay. So education is power. So just being aware of how our local government runs, how important home rule is, and things of that nature, we have to expand our minds so that way we are highly educated on these matters and we know how to show up. But the power is in the education and in the people. Because when we're ignorant to something, that's how we can experience things.
I would build on that and say that I have friends who are tour guides, and they encounter two primary ideas from tourists. One, DC is nobody lives in DC. Nobody lives in DC. DC has no residents. That they get that a lot. People live in DC, they don't know it. Second, DC is already a state. I don't know how what state they think it's replacing, but DC is already a state. So again, that education, as Lily was saying, as Ann was saying, get out there, inform, ask your friends and family. Also, I would, to build on that also, I know there's a lot of frustration about the occupation. Don't get me wrong, I'm there too. But we don't want to feed into the negative narrative that's being said about this city. So charm them, a charm offensive. I've been in webinars and calls with former military, and the morale is not good. They don't want to be doing this. Overall, they don't want to be doing this. So charm offensive, go up to them. Hey, hi, how's your time been in DC? Just kind of, really show them that this beautiful city, people are nice, unless you see them abusing power. Of course, if they're abusing power, that's one thing. But if they're just standing around or they're patrolling, I mean, don't take selfies with them, but really say, hey, engage. I'm a DC resident. And how do you feel about being a highly trained professional, doing traffic stops? Did you sign up to do immigration stuff like this? Engage with them, express the disconnect, show an appreciation for their work, but maybe not the current assignment, so that they go home and tell their friends and family, I don't know why I was there. I don't know why I was in DC, because we didn't see any reason to be there. So just all of it works together.
Great. Thank you, Lorna. I'm going to go to Peter, then I want to go to some questions in the chat. Peter.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, my colleague.
Go ahead.
Peter Gosselin.
Peter Lynch for sponsoring this. I want to ask a version of Bruce's question and building off of what Lorna just said. What do people on this call want to see from their political leaders, particularly the mayor and individual members of the council? Do they want to see, I mean, I hear sort of two issues, statehood and occupation, and I hear two strategies, charm offensive and go on the offensive. And I'm torn about which way we should go. We are in an unusual situation in being a colony because of the Constitution. But it is striking to me that although the mayor has said that she is deeply mad about this, you don't see her on the national networks. You don't see her doing what Mayor Karen Bass has done in Los Angeles. Do people expect that of their political leaders, or don't they? I'm interested in reactions to that.
Right.
Personally, I would say that I anecdotally hear a lot of frustration about compliance before the fact. Like conceding before they've been asked. And there's a lot of frustration about that.
I would I would add I think there is conceding before the fact, and sort of balancing that. And Peter, I don't know what the right balance is in particular, of, raising the head up too high, that folks take advantage of it, right? Like, so how much noise should the mayor be making in this time, and the pushback, and could every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So I do think from what we are hearing is, from the executive and the sort of key agencies, there is this balancing of, how public to be about things and when to be public and a little bit more strategic. I think what you're seeing from other mayors and what you're seeing from other governors is not necessarily disconnected from what's going on in our jurisdiction. I mean, I think that you have sort of both national organizations, but then you have like the Governors Association, the Mayors Association. So I do think some thought is going into, how to think about DC as what could happen and leverage that, because we don't have statehood, we are also in a rock and a hard place about the way we could combat certain things versus the way a state or even a municipality could combat things because they are housed within a state.
Yeah, I heard Monica and Lorna, but as a native Washingtonian, I pride myself on the fact that DC residents are not passive. We have a strong history of resistance and resilience. So we're going to get through this. We all have questions about the way that our mayor is handling this, but we have several nonprofits, ANCs, community associations. When I say that we are showing up by the numbers, because we're not in agreement with this, we're waiting for the council to come back in session. And we're going to go right down there to the Wilson building and voice all of our concerns, because the power is within us. We have a beautifully unique and diverse city, a sanctuary city, and they really want to intrude on that. And as residents, if you ask the average person, we're not in agreement with that. We love all of our beautifully unique wards and communities within those wards. So we're going to stand up and fight against this.
Thank you for that. Peter, did you hear an answer to your question? Is there a follow-up that you'd like to make? I've got a couple other questions to go to.
Well, I would, but Anne, I mean, I do feel that, I mean, Anne should have her say first. Go ahead.
Thank you. I will be quick. Let me just say, Peter, you put this in either or, and I'm gonna say both and, you know, because and not only both and, but also just speaking to everybody on this call, everybody's going to have to make a decision about what they can do, how verbal, how out there they can be, and guess what? Whatever you do is going to be something that's going to be good for all of us to do. So please do something.
Yeah.
Please do something. And and if it's something that you feel good about talking to the National Guard folks, do it. If you feel like you can't stand to be near those, don't go there. No, do what feels good to you and reach out to your friends and neighbors and keep talking.
Okay, and that's great advice. Let me just ask as a follow-up. I mean, look, I'm asking this as a personal question. I'm an ANC commissioner, which is just a very small hyper-local position, but I'm
No,
torn.
it's a very
I'm torn,
influential position.
but I'm torn about how aggressive to be, and I'm torn about how aggressive we're right now. I presented it as an either or situation, but we're only getting one side, I think, in general. We're having citizens do these confrontations. The mayor has spoken, and I think eloquently, about the fact that we are a beautiful city and the fact that she's mad, but she has not taken it to the national media. We we are in a rough position in trying to take it to the national media because we're sort of tarred to begin with by many in this country. And I'm just curious. Maybe my follow-up question is, who on this line thinks that our political leaders should be more aggressive and more out front about their opposition than they have been in this week, 10 days?
Yeah. I believe most of us on this call, like Ann said, there's really isn't a right way or a wrong way. Just do what feels good to you. And showing up every day relentlessly feels good to me and other people in Free DC. We're coming in peace, but we're not passive people. The power is in the education. The more you're educated about your rights, you'll know how to engage with law enforcement. The more you're educated about our local rights and the way that we govern our city, you're more powerful in the way in which you can advocate and show up. As an ANC commissioner, Peter, you are very influential. ANCs connect to the council. You hear everyone's voice in your community, and then you're the messenger that passed that on to the council. But we have to have a local council that's in agreement with the residents of the District of Columbia. You can't go against us. Prime example with the budget cuts, the way that they cut ERAP, you're placing people in position to be homeless. You know that tons of people have lost their federal jobs, not just federal jobs, but local jobs, because the restaurant and hospitality industries are struggling right now in DC. So why would you strip the residents of benefits and supports that we need in regards to housing, SNAP, healthcare, and overall whole well-being? And now we have the president that's saying, hey, if you're unhoused, you outside, you in these encampments, we can incarcerate you or institutionalize you. So we all need to be on one accord regarding that. I'm really for humanity. I do not really care how you identify, white, black, purple, in between. I'm for love and humanity, and that is what I have experienced as a Native Washingtonian for the most part of my life, with my neighbors and people with whom I'm in relationship with, and even strangers.
So this is an excellent conversation, which I do not want to truncate. I am mindful of the time. We're 8 minutes after 8, and I noted that if we wanted to go over a little bit, I would beg the indulgence of our panelists. Are we okay for another 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes? Martin, are you okay? Monica, I don't want to keep you too terribly long, but two people have their hands up, Leonid Jones and then Paulus Weber. Please, Leonid, go ahead. Just have to unmute yourself, Leonard. There you are.
Yeah, I just did. I was having problems with my thumb. Um, I guess it's a reaction. I really asking for help from people like Anne who say reach out to other people around the country and see if they can make calls, send letters, whatever. I have already been on Zoom calls with people I went to college with, and and they are in California. And one of the things that I keep on hearing is sort of the James Carville response that, we should just kind of wait to the midterms and that things will be okay then. And that's the kind of pushback I have gotten. I said, have you paid attention to what's happening in Washington, D.C.? It will be coming to your state or city soon. And there's just this, well, it'll be fixed when we have the midterms. So if you could help me out on how I can convert these people who are somewhat interested, but they are not being active. They're kind of like, well, I'll work for the midterms, but I'm not going to work for DC.
Um,
Well,
oh, you go, Anne.
go ahead, Monica. Go ahead.
I mean, it's always Anne's way as the OG to make space for other people. So Peter's right. But I'll try to keep this brief. Essentially, the decisions are being made right now that could affect whether we have.
And I'm in agreement, and I can't seem to convince other people that because it's not happening in their location as much as, they said LA's not my problem, DC's not my problem. I live someplace else. And so please help me have a more convincing argument. I don't want to get into a rant with friends about what they should do. So if you've got any advice in, I guess, 2 minutes, I would appreciate it.
I mean, so essentially how we have framed it to folks who have that response also is that this is actually about the expansion of presidential power under emergencies and the attempt to consolidate presidential power. We have seen that in sort of how the conflation of emergency power, the number of executive orders, the funding, the firing of federal workers. So this is just another step. And it is now in this time when people need to make their voices heard and petition their government that they don't agree with this overarching issue that of expansion of presidential power. And DC is one example, but it is the testing ground because he has this power. And if we don't raise our voices right now, by the time the midterms come, it will be too late. So, Trump wants to get rid of mail-in voting and ballot, like the electronic ballot boxes. These things are not disconnected. And I think when framing it sort of in the national way and showing how DC is part of this, it's important for people to raise their voices right now.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Paul,
Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. Leonard, by the way, is a great constituent. Paulus, go ahead.
Couple things. I have, engaged with some people and on Facebook and have just tried to say, listen, the more we pull together, the safer we all are. I specifically asked Facebook friends, I don't have a lot, but, just to, when you speak out we can't do it. We don't have this representation. But if you do it and tell your representatives that you are against this, you're also telling them that you're against it for your own state, your own, community. So it has to be, so there's cohesion that way. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I'm kind of impressed with Mayor Bowser overall. I think she's maintained a dignity that was in the face of hostility, that like really contemptuous hostility that makes me personally enraged. And she's kept it together, and I think she's made excellent points. I would like to know what she needs rather than say, hey, what should she be doing? What does she need? Why isn't the city council meeting an emergency session? And, things like that. What does she need?
Anyone?
Thank you, Paulus. I agree. We should definitely have an emergency session regarding the council. Totally agree with you.
Paulise, if I could jump in too, something that I've noticed is that the more people that have come out with Free DC, the more people that have come out on the streets and raised their voice and contacted their council members, the more council members pay attention, the more mayor pays attention, the more room they have to be vocal. For instance, Councilmember Fruman came to the Free DC meeting last night. I believe that's the first time he's come to a Free DC meeting. Yeah. And a couple months ago, he wouldn't have considered doing that. Mayor Bowser has been leaning in a little bit more, but that I think is partly too because of the amount of people that are pouring out and making their voices heard. So when you rally and when you get involved and when you make your voice heard and your neighbors do as well, it makes it easier for these politicians to do the same. And that's maybe not the way we'd like to see it, but I think that's the reality of this. And I see Steve's question about Representative Eleanor Holmes Norton. She is getting older, but I saw her at the courthouse last week, and she's there, she's present, she's passing bills, and there is a lot of supportive Congress people that are helping her out as well. So I wouldn't second guess her, even though her age does show, but she is doing work. But I think the final point is just get out there, make some noise, and make it untenable for the council and the mayor not to join in that chorus.
And I would also add, I hear a lot of people say, well, why go out on the street? Because this administration doesn't care. That's fair. This executive branch does not care. But I've also heard over and over again from people who are a lot smarter than me that the courts are watching. The courts are watching. People come out on what issues are they protesting and rallying for or protesting against. And members of Congress are watching. So, the visibility does matter. Just because the person in the White House doesn't care does not mean that being out there and raising your voice, as Peter said, as everyone said, doesn't matter. It really does. It does make a difference.
I want to give a question to the...
and to further elaborate on what Peter shared, Councilmember George from Ward 4, she posts updates about Free DC within her newsletter, and there was a meeting in Ward 1 with the council member yesterday as well.
Thanks, everybody.
So, Bruce, I can send you a draft, little set of things that people can send out. I can send you messages if you could send that to the people who attended here.
I will. And just so everyone knows, I will distribute to everyone on this call tonight the link to the recording, the link to the chat, so that everything captured in the chat you will have by way of email from me tomorrow. I do want to get to a couple of questions. One that's in the chat that we haven't gotten to yet. Monica asked, are there any resources on how to peacefully protest, as the concern for disruption and clashing with police is a huge concern, especially as we get later into the summer? Are there specific guidelines to help people protest peacefully that either the League has, Free DC has, or ACLU has?
So this evening, Free DC, we actually hosted a training for our youth because I'm not for sure if everyone is aware, but everyone is returning back to school. DC Public Schools first day is going to be on this upcoming Monday. So we want to make sure that everyone is educated, young, old, and in between regarding knowing your rights. We make sure that we go out together. If you see something, say something, pull your phone out and record, and make sure that we are protecting each other by advocating and utilizing our voices. You see something going on that's wrong, we're not saying get violent, but we're saying, hey, you're violating that person's rights.
Okay. So one thing, yeah, sorry, Monica, go ahead.
No, I would just add, I think the fundamental basis is things can go wrong. Different people approach how to protest or engage or demonstrate in different ways. The fundamental thing is knowing your rights and what your rights are and making the decisions for yourself in those moments that sort of Anne said, do what feels right. And so I posted in the chat the demonstrations guide that sort of lines that out. And also, if you do decide to engage in civil disobedience, things you should be aware of.
That's super helpful.
If I could jump in, Bruce, if I could jump in as well, sure. There's a group run by a Georgetown University professor called the DC Peace Team, and they do trainings all the time in all sorts of different ways that help people facilitate peaceful demonstrations. And then also the Free DC non-cooperation training has nonviolence and nonviolent demonstration as their priority. So that's another avenue to get tapped into those trainings.
Thank you, Pete.
My colleague Carol Grunwald asked in the chat, has Free DC considered making yard signs that residents can buy and put out in their front yards? Has that been something you've thought about?
Yes, we have them. I believe I've responded in the chat.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. I'm just really sorry about that. Yeah. Okay.
They are a $10 donation. We typically pass them out at our meetings, or you can visit our website and purchase any type of Free DC merchandise.
Okay.
And we also do art builds as well. I believe we did 2 to 3 art builds within the last week.
All right. I think it's about time to wrap up. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate Martin and Monica and Ann and Lily and Lorna, your participation tonight. We had at our peak about 95, 96 folks on the call, including the panelists. So very good attendance. We do have lots of resources in the chat, which again, I'll memorialize. I'll send that out to everybody so that you have those. And I know that for our ANC, for my constituents, continuing to speak to them, inform them, help them understand how to engage as they wish to do it is going to be very important. If it happens that the demonstrations that I saw reference to in the chat that are being scheduled for around Labor Day are ones that are call outs to really get people to attend, I certainly will publicize those to my constituents and encourage them to show up for those. I would ask all of the panelists here and anyone else on the call, in addition to having us go to online sources of where there's going to be a demonstration or something, anything that you know, please send it along and we'll distribute it. I'm a little surprised, and maybe this is going to happen over Labor Day, that there hasn't been yet organized, and correct me if I'm wrong, the kind of march on Washington by Washingtonians. A massive 100, 200,000 person display on the mall to say, what the hell? And that's the kind of thing that I think we can be helpful. I certainly can as a commissioner to get the word out. And in conjunction with that, if people are going to participate, say, oh, by the way, here are guidelines, know your rights, yes, but here are some sensible things to do and not to do so that you don't get into trouble. We want to keep people safe. So anyway, if those events are taking shape, please let us know. But for now, I want to again say thanks to the panelists, thanks to the participants. We're going to sign off. I'll be back in touch to share the resources from tonight. So thank you guys very much. Really appreciate it. Peter, did you have a final word? I'm sorry. Peter Lynch?
Thank you very much for holding this. Thank you, everybody, for being here and stay involved. Keep at it. Keep going. And sooner rather than later, I think we will be the 51st state. So keep that in mind.
And if there are things that our commission needs to be doing, by all means, let us know, and we'll be happy to take that on board. So thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
much.
Thank you.